But mostly what I do today is not so much the coaching. Most of what I do is buying companies and taking them global. So that's more of what I do today. I used to do a lot more of buying broken companies and fixing them. But now what I look for is a good company that might be in sort of one city or one town or even one country, and work out how I can take it into 30, 40, 50 countries is possibly the simplest way to describe what I'm doing today.
Okay, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the One Shot Movement podcast, where we're interviewing inspirational entrepreneurs, business leaders, diving deep into their stories and pulling out wisdom, educating people about all things life, all things business. I'm super excited to have a very special guest today. He's been a bit of a mentor to me over my business journey. I started my business journey back in 2002, and I used to learn how to do business from this guy, from all his books. In fact, he's published 17 and self-published 17 books and done an incredible book deal that he can talk about later. He was regarded as the #1 business coach in the world by Entrepreneur magazine. He's the founder of Action Coach, which has business in over 60 countries and over 1,000 offices worldwide. He's presented all around the world. He's based in Vegas, and he's an incredible business leader that's making things happen. I will say, in regards to my experience, 20 years ago, I learnt every single little bit of business from Brad with his books on leads, and one of my favorite books, Billionaire in Training, which I really took a lot out of building business for cash flow and investing into property. And I now have 11 houses and a property portfolio valued at $7 million last year. Leverage is something I've learnt from him, and I've been in the franchising industry for a long time as well. So, Brad, I've probably missed a fair few things out there, but welcome to the show, and I'd love you to fill in the gaps and tell a bit about your story.
Yeah, dang, buddy, you did a pretty good job of it there. A couple of things that are missing though: husband and father of 5, so 5 kids. We do live here in Las Vegas, not Brisbane, Vegas, where I grew up originally. So now I'm an Oz-American, half and half, I guess. And business-wise, I think I've had everything from pizza business to dog food to you name it. I've either been involved in it or bought it. Mostly what I do today is not so much the coaching. Most of what I do is buying companies and taking them global. So that's more of what I do today. I used to do a lot more of buying broken companies and fixing them. But now what I look for is a good company that might be in sort of one city or one town or even one country, and work out how I can take it into 30, 40, 50 countries is possibly the simplest way to describe what I'm doing today.
Cool. And I guess, Action Coach, for me, that whole business coaching world was really important for a young startup guy all the way back in 2002. And, you've been able to build that as an international business. Can you talk a bit about that journey? And I was very much aware of trying to, your business is worth $0 because it's not making a profit, and you were going in to fix that. But talk a bit about Action Coach as a brand and the international expansion, the challenges, anything you want to share there, because that's been quite a big business of yours.
Yeah, well, look, we just opened in Russia with Action Coach, so now we're coaching in, I believe, 81 countries, and 3 of them communist countries, which is kind of cool to sit back and think that here we are in China and Vietnam and Russia teaching them entrepreneurialism. That's kind of a fun thing. But from a brand perspective, we started out as a company called Action International, and we had to rechange to Action Coach because branding of that sort of a boring name didn't really stick, whereas Action Coach is slightly different, and therefore people sort of can remember it and that type of thing. And but we've taken that brand now on a journey of, when you first started out, you got to remember I started 26, almost 27 years ago doing this, when no one even understood what business coaching was, let alone people had a business coach type thing. So we didn't just have to brand, we had to build a profession, we had to build an industry. And in doing so, we had to educate the market. And I think that's where I spent many years writing for Entrepreneur magazine, for that simple understanding and for people to learn what is a business coach and why do I need a business coach. And I think recently we've transitioned from, oh, you're failing, you should get a coach, to, oh, they're doing well, they must have a coach. I think we've transitioned the profession. But as a brand, when you're evolving internationally, and this is one thing I try and teach a lot of Aussies, which I know a lot of your podcast listeners are from Australia, but many around the world as well. I think it's one of the craziest things about Australians is they are great entrepreneurs, but they don't think globally. You know, they think way too small, way too local. When I first moved here to America, people were like, why are you moving to America type thing? I said, well, if I want to be in the biggest pond there is. I want to be in the biggest business pond available, and I want to play that game. I don't want to be the biggest business coach in Australia. I want to be the biggest and best in the world. And so I think that having that desire, but also having come from Australia where, you know, you've got very high wages, massive cost of transportation, ridiculous cost of vacations every year for all of your staff, paying them more when they're on vacation than when they're actually at work. You know, all of that craziness of Australia makes Australia a very hard market to be successful in. And if you can be successful in Australia, I believe you'll crush it around the world.
And I guess business coaching, was quite probably foreign. You were the only business coach I knew back in 2002 as a young guy in business, but you were doing a lot more around education as well. You were running a lot of events. You were teaching, I called it very simple business fundamentals like leads, conversion, and breaking it down to a granular level. And, one of the biggest takeaways that I really took out of your business is around a formula. You can elaborate on that, but it was, don't just get 10% profit every year and just aim for the collective to be a 10% profit. Improve leads by 10%, conversion by 10%, increase average dollar by 10%, retention by 10%, and look at the effect that has. Is that something that you would really encourage people to understand when they're building their business?
Well, yeah, it's called my 5 ways formula. If people jump on YouTube, they can type in Brad Sugar's 5 ways and they'll see it right there. But the 5 ways formula it was my first ever book, Instant Cash Flow. So maybe that was where you found it back in those days. I think I wrote that in about 97 or 98. And we've put it again in Buying Customers, one of the more recent books. And the philosophy behind it is very simple. The word leverage is mathematically divide to multiply. If you break stuff down and fix each small segment, then the overall impact is quite massive. And so what we're looking at with leads by conversion, and most business owners don't even know how many leads they're getting today or how many leads they get this week. They don't know their actual conversion rate. They can guess at it, and they'll guess above what it is in most cases. They don't know their repeat business rate. They don't know their average dollar sale. And they don't know their margins. These 5 items that create your number of customers, your revenues, and your profitability, if you don't know those 5 items, how do you improve them? And that's where, when we work on that segment of a business, the marketing segment of a business, we really break it down into those 5 distinct areas and say, these are the 5 areas where we have to get massive improvement in order to get this thing really growing. Now, that being said, the concept of leverage is even more important than just that formula. The concept of leverage, when I first started teaching it, I taught it with the mathematical formula, divide to multiply, or the simple statement of ever more with ever less. But people didn't really understand that. So what I came to is a simple definition to teach it, and that is, do the work once, get paid forever. So, why do I teach investing in real estate? Well, you buy the house once and you get paid forever and ever and ever, amen, and your minimum return is 400%. If you put 20% down and over the next 20 years someone pays the mortgage off for you, well, you put in 20,000, it's worth at least 100 that you bought it for. It might have even gone up in value, and people think that's the most important thing in real estate. It doesn't matter if it goes up in value as long as someone else pays it off for you. If you understand the formula I teach of do the work once, get paid forever, you understand that in business, you're not trying to just build a business. You're trying to build a business that works without you so that you can do the work one time, build it up over 3, 5, 7 years, and then let it run and make you money forever. People always look at me with Action Coach, and I remember when Action Coach was 10 years old, I retired at that point in time, and I left my CEOs to run the company. I stepped back in a couple of years ago because I was bored, and I'm about to step back out again, I believe, and let the company be run by other people. Because, I currently, and people seem to think it's weird, but I run 8 companies. Actually, we just bought a share of a 9th, but I do that in 2 days a week. So, I work from 9 till 3 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, hence why we're doing this interview now at this time, because it's Thursday here. So there we go.
And you just touched on a really, you talk about 8 companies. I remember one of your really profound takeaways was about, there's employee, then there's a business owner, and then, there's different stages of entrepreneurship, and you're at your highest stage where you're now at that investor stage. And I've started investing in a few private companies over the last couple of years because I'm trying to get into that level as well. Do you want to talk about the different stages of, entrepreneurship, etc.?
Yeah, sure. Look, and that goes back to the book you mentioned, Billionaire in Training, where we go through that ladder, and you start out as a student and you're at level -1 on the entrepreneurial ladder, because as a student, you're a cost to society, basically. Either your parents or the community pays for your schooling. Now, why do people invest in your schooling? Well, so that you can become an employee. We build you to a point where you can become an employee and you can pay your taxes. Now, a lot of businesses need employees. They need people to do the work, and they need people that'll do the job and, pay taxes. Now, unfortunately, for the majority of citizens, they never get past that level. They never learn how to go past that, and you can't out-earn your learning. You just can't. And so what we teach, though, is then how to go to become self-employed. And that level of self-employed understands that what you're doing when you have a job is your job is an apprenticeship to your own business. So you should have multiple jobs. You should have a job in sales at some point and get taught sales by someone else who's paying you to learn it. You should have a job in marketing, in finance. You should have a job in, purchasing or something. You should have different jobs so that you can learn all the aspects of running your own business. That's really what having a job should be. It's an apprenticeship that you get paid for. Now, if you're good at your job, you'll get paid even more for it. But then, now, self-employed, you get onto the seesaw of business. You sort of do the work, make the sale, do the work, make the sale. You're always either selling or doing, and you're running backwards and forwards on that seesaw because there's only one person in the business. And the crazy thing is, you think you're a business owner at that level. You're not. You're self-employed, and you work for the craziest person you know. That's the very basic fundamentals of it. Now, your job is as a self-employed person, which unfortunately about 80% of people at self-employed end up giving up and going back and getting a job. Now, a lot of people say they failed. No, most of them give up. Most of them don't actually fail. Most of them say, you know what, the heck with this. I'm going to go back and get a job where it's easier than what I'm doing right now. And they work for someone else. And some people graduate, they start to employ others. And once you start employing others, you realize just how much more there is to learn. Because see, it's self-employed. You think of what you've got to learn to be a good self-employed business owner. You've got to learn sales and marketing, and you've got to learn purchasing and legals and reading a contract, and you've got to learn IT. You've got to learn social media. You've got to learn marketing of all of it. You've got to learn all that stuff. And so then when you get to employing other people, now you've got to learn leadership and recruiting and management and systemization and business planning and all of these other things that you have to learn. And so that's where the level of self-employed becomes the level of manager. And so you go from level 0 as an employee to level 1 self-employed, level 2 manager, then you hit level 3, which is the game, which is to become an owner. And my definition of a business, kind of butts heads with a lot of people because they don't understand what I'm truly trying to get to. But my definition is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. If you have to be there, it's not a business, it's a job. And the challenge for a lot of people is they just can't see how to make a business that works so they don't have to. And I said, well, hang on, here was me. I was the only business coach and only presenter for Action Coach back 27 years ago. Now I don't have to do any of it. I don't even have to run the company if I don't want to. If I enjoy it, and I enjoy doing the seminars still. So I do 38 of those a year. That's it. I do 38 events, and that keeps me busy enough. And, I enjoy that. Now, once you hit the level of owner, now you've got a business that's working without you. You've got passive income, and business is the best passive income source on the planet. Far better than real estate, far better than shares, anything that people tell you. Then you have to learn. You've got that passive income. You now have to learn, how do I actually invest this passive income? That's a very big part of the success factor. And you got to learn 3 types of investments: businesses, real estate, and shares, because different points in the cycle of the market, different things need to be, different things are performing in different ways. When business is performing and real estate's not, or when real estate's performing and business isn't, and so on and so forth. And then finally you hit the level of entrepreneur, where now it's not about investing your money, which is what an investor is. Now at the level of entrepreneur, it's about building things that other people invest in, doing real estate developments that other people buy or invest in, doing businesses that you sell shares in, or building franchises or licenses. And these are the sort of entrepreneurial tasks when you get to that top level of the ladder.
And one of the things, franchising, I guess, was a highly popular business model in the early 2000s. And I clearly remember you talking about the selling the bit of paper, and scaling your business with a franchising model. Where do you see that industry's gone over the last 10 years? Is it still, a really popular model? What's the challenges of franchising, or is it in rapid growth still collectively?
Franchising is a wonderful business model, and I couldn't be more happy to be in it. But also, so is licensing, so is the rental business model, and so on. There's many different business models that are great models. And I talk about that in my latest book, Pulling Profits Out of a Hat. There's a section there on strategy. But within franchising, what I've seen happening is far more professionalism, both from governments regulating professionalism into the industry, and just the industry bodies self-regulating and creating more education platforms for franchise executives to become certified franchising executives and actually understand the industry. I've seen a shift in the types of franchises, though. Where we used to see pretty much only cleaning companies and restaurants. Now you've got every type of white-collar franchise. The gymnasium business has had a massive explosion in the smaller gyms because of franchising. I see it. I guess the other thing is a bit more globalization of it. Our partners in India franchise India. Our partners in Middle East franchise Middle East. These are groups that are bringing Western franchises into that marketplace at a rapid rate of knots. So where a lot of the franchises don't seem to be growing as much in their home markets, their international expansion has been quite rapid. We've been in the top 30 international franchises for a lot of years now, because of just the breadth of where we are. We're in more countries than almost any franchise. And that's just a big thing. We aim to be in 120 countries. And our goal for that was simply because at the time we said it, McDonald's was in 119. So I might as well do one better than McDonald's. So, that's the sort of thing. I think the franchise business, though, unfortunately, has historically had a group of people that franchised a business that wasn't successful. So instead of even proving the business was successful, they just went and franchised it and thought, I'll make a lot of money franchising this. Well, hang on, is the business itself even successful? Let's start there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, but I love that industry. I think it's a wonderful industry.
And well, let's move into books. I'm actually just about to publish my first book, which is around a bit about this whole podcast story. But you self-published 17 books, and if I'm correct, you did the biggest deal in history with a publisher as well. Can you want to share a bit about your books? Doing that deal and why doing that deal, and even dive a little bit into your latest book, Pulling Profits Out of a Hat.
Yeah, look, when I first started the business book scene in Australia, there was like 2 publishers that published business books, and they might have done 10 a year between them. So here I was trying to get these books out. So, I'll just self-publish. And when I'd hit, I think it was 12 books, maybe 14, 12 or 14, I decided, you know what, I've sold, and I was, you know, Dymocks loved me, all of the bookstores loved me because Whitcoulls in New Zealand, they all loved me because I'd go and do seminars and they'd sell a lot of books. And, but then when I came to the United States, I said, listen, I'm not going to self-publish there. And I went and got myself a publishing agent, and then went and hit the big ones. And McGraw-Hill, New York, bought all 14 of my books in one go. So they'd never bought 14 business books off of anyone ever in one deal. So but they did. They bought and published all 14 of them internationally. So now we're at 17. Yeah, the latest two, The Wealth Coach, I wrote that to help young people learn about money. And I gave it to one of my friends and said, hey, would you give this to your teenagers? Tell me what you think of it. And he read the book and he said to me, you know what, I can't give that to my teenagers. What do you mean? He said, well, I don't know any of that stuff. How could I just give it to them? I have to read it first. So I actually had to rewrite the book so that adults, it made sense for adults and kids to learn and understand the process of creating wealth, how wealth actually happens to people in the world. And then the latest one, Pulling Profits Out of a Hat, because what we were looking at was a lot of our clients have what's called exponential growth, year on year, cumulative growth, and they scale the business. And so when you see a business that scales, it was like, well, how is that business scaling? How are they getting that exponential growth? So my co-author Monty and I sat down, and over 2 years, we put together a case study on a lot of our clients that were doing it and how they did it and what were the 5 core disciplines that led to a business that actually had exponential growth. And we use the term discipline because, you know, you see a lot of these business books where, oh, here's this company and it's had this massive growth. Well, as long as you're employing the discipline, you'll continue to do that. But if you stop being disciplined in that area, you will go backwards. And that's why it's very important to every business to stay on each discipline regularly. And
yeah, I guess one thing that I really, because it's a passion of mine, and it was drummed off. There's the book, guys. So Pulling Profits Out of a Hat. When you check Brad out at the end, you'll be able to, go and have a look at all his. But with your books, you really had them so niched into different topics. I remember, there was a book just on cash flow, and there was a book just on that. So, that's quite a amazing strategy, because you get someone like myself that wants to learn. You learn all about cash flow, then it's just a natural progression into lead gen and etc.
If you didn't learn lead generation and promotions, then conversion rate didn't make any sense. So you needed to learn conversion rate. Then once you got that, you had to get repeat business. And so when I wrote the book, looking at, and each of them went through the sort of top 10 strategies that you can use. So when we went into repeat business, which is literally just called Instant Repeat Business, really complex naming of my books. You sat down and you said, well, what does a business need to do to get that level of repeat business? And some businesses, they needed to restructure the way they sell their product or service, or even add in other products or services, because they were built around a single sale type business. And that's not really a business, that's a promotion. If you got to consistently get new customers, business is tough, because profit in business comes from repeat business. That's just the very simple nature of the way business works. Getting a new customer costs money. And by the time you've bought that customer, hence that book there, where is it? Buying Customers. When you sit down and start thinking about buying customers, which we just released version 2.0 of that one, you start thinking that a business needs to understand how to invest its money to buy a customer. So if you're investing $100 in an ad, it's got to produce well more than that in order for it to be successful.
And I guess while we're talking about this now, I do want to talk about property, because it is a passion of mine, and I did, really take away a lot out of your, philosophies around property in those early days, and I've been investing now since 2002. But you talk about buying customers, back in 2002, buying customers is totally different to what people do in buying customers now. How have you seen business models change, or not necessarily business models, but how the influence of social media? And there was a while where I was, following all your business movements, and you did mention you retired. That may be the reason I didn't see you a lot, but you've come back and doing all your drive times and all these things now. Is that something because it keeps you excited? Are you doing it? Just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, well, the marketing has got a lot harder and a lot easier. Now, it's got a lot harder because, when I first started out, you had 3 radio stations, 4 TV stations, 1 newspaper. That was it. It was like, okay, that's where you can advertise. All other stuff you can't do. So it was like that was your choice. And it made it harder because you had to get it to work with the limited volume or the limited methodologies. And that's why direct marketing became a thing, and newsletters and direct mail and all of that. Now, technology has moved it to a point where now I can niche down my marketing. I can actually target 40 of the best perfectly targeted people for my business. So instead of it being a business where you had to spend a lot of money to hit a massive number of people and hopefully get to that small group that would buy from you, now you have to spend a lot of money on managing and have people doing the work, managing literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of marketing campaigns, targeting very small groups of people. We're just testing. I'm putting out a new program called 30X, 30 minutes a day with me for 30 days to get 30 years business knowledge. And our advertising for that, for example, I believe that the testing phase has been over 200 different ads tested.
Right.
When you think about testing 200 ads back 20 years ago, there's no way in the world that would have ever happened. Yeah. Today, testing of marketing could be done with a $5 budget. Jump on Google AdWords or Facebook advertising or LinkedIn advertising, and boom, you'll have a result in the first hour or two telling you whether or not your ad is any good or it's awful.
Yeah.
So we now, it's much harder in that we have to do a lot more management of it and a lot more detail orientation, but it's a lot easier that you can actually get exactly to whom you want. Now, when I sit down and look at those ads that the team is building for 30X, their targeting is so minute in some of these things. These ads are only for people that own hairdressing salons. Yeah. And these ads are only for people that own beauty salons. And these ads are only for people. Do you know what I mean? It's so targeted, makes it much harder and much easier. Now, when it comes to social media, I think that if people understand marketing today, the 2 most important things you can have is testimonials and ratings. If you don't have any good testimonials, your business will get beat up. And I learned this lesson the hard way. When the internet first started becoming a thing, I didn't know to go and get all my best customers to record video testimonials and put them up online for me, or even write that sort of stuff. I didn't know to get ratings and things. And, I had a couple of people beat me up, and now it's like, all my best customers are now writing about me. And it's like, okay, well, now all my customers tell the world about me. Everyone sees what good stuff I do, rather than 1 or 2 people who try and pretend that there's a negative out there in the world. And so testimonials are vital. Ratings as well. I ask business owners, tell me, what is your actual Google rating? And you go on, when someone searches you on Google, what's your rating? How many stars do you have out of 5? And they're like, I don't know. And that's scary. It's scary that you don't know what your Google rating is. Very, very scary.
Yep. And are you a lot more present or a lot more visual now online because of the 30X thing, or is it something that you're just, it's a challenge? Or
you know what? With 5 kids, I decided to stop going out on the road as much, so I don't do live events anywhere near as much. So what I do now is I can sit in my house right here. I'm at home. I'm going to go and pick the kids up from school in a little while, and I'll be sitting here doing a podcast, and your podcast will reach hundreds or thousands of people. That to me is a lot simpler methodology than me having to get on a plane and fly to the other half of the world to do a seminar in Germany or in or down in Mexico or Chile or something like that.
Yeah. And we are moving into property now. That is a passion of mine. I love, people are going out on Friday night. I get on to propertyrealestate.com or something like that and look for good deals. You've been big in property, and Billionaire in Training was build your business for cash flow, invest into property shares or, that next level companies. In the US, one of the things I thought maybe Brad's in the US because the property deals over there that he could do, but you've been a big property investor, and I'd love to hear about your theories for that.
Yeah, and actually we just sold our property management company down in Texas, which is an interesting part of it. Listen, real estate is, if I can explain it in the simplest way possible to someone, right? If I said to you, and let's actually you and me role play this, Craig, I want you to buy this share in Microsoft, but you'll only ever have to pay 20% of the value of the share. Someone else will pay for 80% of the share of Microsoft for you, but you have to wait 20 years to get it. Would you like to buy this share of Microsoft and only pay 20% of it?
Absolutely.
Right. Why would you want to do that? Well, because someone else is going to pay for 80% of it for you. Yeah. Now, everyone gets their head caught up in, I'm not sure if it'll go up or down. Who cares? Really, who cares? As long as you can have a tenant that pays the mortgage. And this is the thing that people say, tenants pay rent. No, they don't. Tenants don't pay rent. They pay your mortgage for you. So your mortgage is paid off over 20 years or 25, depending upon what you do. Now, in the beginning, you might have to put in a few dollars every month to help pay the mortgage off. You might have to in the beginning. But as rent goes up over a period of a year, 2 years, 5 years, the rent now covers all the costs and the mortgage. And 20 years from now, that thing's fully paid off. And you've probably been collecting some money along the way as some of the rent paid more than the mortgage as the rent went up over the 20 years. Gee shucks. When people play the game of Monopoly the first time around, they're really worried. How many should I buy? Should I buy this one? Oh, no, that's the purple one. They're awful. I want to get the dark blue ones. And that's... But by the third or fourth time round the board, they're like, is it for sale? Yes, I'll buy it. Give it to me.
That's right.
And that's people who really understand real estate understand that the only way you can do a bad deal in real estate is if it's a deal where you're not going to have a tenant paying the mortgage for you.
Yeah.
Now, if you can buy in markets where it's easy to get tenants, then you'll always have someone paying the mortgage off for you. And that's what I always suggest to people. And that's my book, The Real Estate Coach, was written to help people understand how to get into real estate and how to start there. And, once a year I do my masterclass where I teach people buying and selling companies and buying into real estate and investing in real estate, because whilst that methodology of put in 20% and they pay you the other 80%, so you make 400% return is, anyone who doesn't buy real estate after understanding that is just stupid. They're just stupid at that point because, I don't have enough money to raise a deposit. Well, then work harder, get a part-time job, and bloody get some money to make a deposit on a house. Go and buy one in out of Whoop Whoop. Don't try and buy one in downtown Sydney on day one. Start with what you can afford, and go from there. And then unfortunately people read. And I love Robert, but I disagree with him on this point. They read Robert Kiyosaki's book, and he says, your house is not an asset. That's absolute rubbish. Your own home is the best asset you could ever buy. Why? A, the interest is cheaper. B, if you don't have to, you're paying the mortgage off of a house. It's better to be paying the mortgage off a house you own than one someone else owns.
Yeah.
That's just, why would you pay someone else's mortgage when you could pay your own bloody mortgage? It's just silly that people seem to think their own home isn't an asset. But again, you can learn so many tricks of the trade within all of that to build wealth even greater. Down in New Zealand, one of my students in New Zealand, Ron Hoi Fong, Ron's done a phenomenal job at teaching other people. I'm the patron of their group down there. In Auckland, New Zealand, as a group of students, they now own over $1 billion worth of real estate in Auckland alone. Wow. I love having students like that go out and they just use a very simple strategy. And it's a strategy of buying a 2-bedroom apartment that is quite large and has a formal dining, turning it into a 3-bedroom apartment. And hey, presto, you just increase the value by 20 to 30%, depending upon the suburb that you're in. These are things that, if I can be really blunt, Craig, if you don't learn money, don't expect to be good at it.
Yep.
It's you can't out earn your learning is probably the simplest way to put that. And people keep bitching and moaning about the results they didn't get for work they didn't do. And I'm not talking about hands-on work. I'm talking the learning work. The learning work of money is the hardest work of money.
Yeah, look, and even like banks, you're using other people's money there to build your wealth too. Like I remember one of my houses now, I've probably put $30,000 in, and it's doubled over the last 10 years, and that doubling is worth $500,000, and that was just off me using 30,000 of my own money. It just seems like a no-brainer, but it is about learning. You only know what you only know.
Yeah, and what you don't know in money is generally what's going to beat you up. So, but stick to your knitting, do good, pick a niche and get your rules. I'm a firm believer, if you're going to be an investor, you need a set of rules. And that is a written document of this is what I will invest in, this is what I won't invest in. If it meets these criteria, I will invest in it. Yeah. If you don't have that, you're not an investor, you're a gambler. Okay? Yeah. And the other is a niche or a niche. You've got to pick. This is the area. I remember for me, in Brisbane, there was Woodridge, then there was Ipswich. You pick what you're good at and stick with it.
Yeah. And this podcast is about you've got one shot at life. Go out there and give it your best shot. It's fair to say you've absolutely lived to that to a T. But there is one situation that you've had to experience, which would be ridiculously traumatic, and it was on your website. So I want to ask you about that. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time a couple of years ago for the mass shooting Route 91. How, if you can just put it into your own words, that experience, but also, was there any awakenings, or was there? Yeah, I'd love you to just, if you can, share a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. It's my wife and I were both there having a great time. We love country music, and unfortunately for me, it was the second time. First time I was held at gunpoint was in Mexico, and then this was the second time under fire. I think that, and I don't try and understand what happened, how it happened. I don't try and do that. I know what happened for us. As the sheriff here said, if you try and get into the head of a madman, all you'll do is become mad. I think that we were extraordinarily lucky. We were very lucky. We were under fire for about 8 minutes of the 11 minutes, I think. So when we got out, though, we got separated. And that was probably one of the most traumatic experiences for both of us. I didn't know where my wife was. She didn't know where I was. And, not knowing that was just harrowing till I finally found her. But we were also doubly lucky in the fact that 2 or 3 weeks later we found out that my wife was pregnant. Right. So our baby daughter Riley became the youngest survivor of Route 91. We didn't even know Lauren was pregnant when we were there. And so that gave us a very good reason to move on and move on well. And I think that without Riley, it might have been a bit tougher. It might have been a bit harder, but it's taken a lot of counselling, and I'm very happy to admit, taken a lot of counselling and a lot of therapy to get through. Because as much as I thought in the beginning, oh yeah, I'm fine, it's okay. I started seeing myself reacting to situations in a way that I wouldn't normally have, and that was not good. So seeking the help of professionals, and I think it's interesting, though, that mentally I thought I didn't need to, with mental health, I thought I didn't need to get the help of a professional. But when it comes to business, I'll turn to professionals every single day. Creating ClickFunnels for this new program, I go and find the best ClickFunnel guy in the country and I hire him. I'm creating some new video stuff, and it's like I went and just hired the best video guy that I know to be able to do that. And here I was thinking I didn't need that. And here I am running the biggest business coaching company in the world, where every day I say to people, you got to hire the professionals to help you do it. So, seeking the help of a professional.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate you sharing with that. And, these type of moments, they are life-changing, and they put life into perspective in lots of ways too. And, look, I mean, we had
the number of our friends whose life changed dramatically, not because of being there, but just because they knew we were,
Yeah.
and just seeing what happened. Because now, like, people will come and have conversations with me, and even one of my wife's friends was visiting the other day, and they're in the gun business, and they're like, I don't know if are you guys going to be upset if we talk about guns and stuff? And it's like, no, I'm very fine with it, because I have a very logical solution for America and guns, or the world and guns. I'm happy for you to own a gun if you can get insurance for it. Treat it like a car. If you can get a license and get insurance, congratulations. And most people just wouldn't be insured for it. So simple as that. Most of the crazies out there would not be able to get insurance, and therefore not get a gun.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just usually when we finish each episode, I like to just sort of ask a few questions like, do you have a mentor now? Like, you're the mentor of many people around the world. Do you have a mentor that you go to, or you've learnt off, or who taught you what you know?
Yeah, I have a bunch of them, actually. But three I work with most often: one in finance, one in business, and one in personal. But everyone, see, I'm lucky in that I run a business coaching company. So I have 1,000+ business coaches around the world, and each and every one of them is learning new things every day and putting up new learning content every day. And so I'm watching and learning. I'm still listening to a book about a book a week, maybe sometimes more, maybe sometimes less, but about a book a week. I used to read a book a week. Now I just listen to them on Audible. Makes my life a whole lot simpler. A mentor can be found anywhere. And if you don't have a great one, just pick up a book, start there. Subscribe to the podcast, start there. Whatever you need to do to go and do it. I saw you interviewed Travis Bell the other day.
Yeah.
There's so many great people out there that are educators. And the wonderful thing about the internet now is you can stop watching crazy cat videos and start watching great videos on how to grow and become wealthy. And, within a few weeks, you can have totally revolutionized your thinking with online learning these days.
Yeah. And when you started your business and business journey, did you have people or was it just, I'm just going to trial and error and learn all this myself in the field?
A lot of it was that. I was lucky that my dad was very common sense smart. But, in the early days, I studied anyone I could get my hands on. When I was reading Drayton Birds and stuff like these guys that don't even print anymore, reading stuff that just John Caples and Claude Hopkins, these who wrote books in the 20s, 30s, 60s, 70s. I was just studying every single book I could get my hands on to learn. Because as Jim Rohn put it very simply, he said, the more you learn, the more you earn. It's as simple as that. He said, if you read a book a week for the rest of your life, I guarantee you'll be a millionaire within 10 years.
Yeah.
That's not a hard thing to do, to read a book a week.
No.
But, people say, I can't read a book a week, but they can go to the pub one day a week, or they can watch an entire series of TV and binge watch on Netflix one series a week. So.
Yeah. What about the best piece of advice along your journey that's just stuck with you that you always come back to?
Jim Rohn, easily Jim Rohn. Never wish your life were easier, wish that you were better.
Yeah. And what about your worst piece of advice?
Most of the worst advice was never advice. It was people trying to talk you out of your dreams and goals.
Yeah.
When you look at the scenarios of success, successful people will encourage you.
Yeah.
The ones who've never gone after their dreams and goals, to let someone who's given up on their dreams talk you out of yours is kind of weird.
That's right. What about your favourite book of all time, not including your own?
Favorite of all time. Probably My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising. It's 2 books in one by Claude Hopkins.
Yeah.
It was the starting point of me really understanding marketing, which once you understand marketing, business becomes easy.
Yeah. And what about what's next for Brad Sugars? You did talk a bit about it through the podcast, but from here forward, and where do we find more about you?
Well, finding more about me, any social media platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, not so much Pinterest. I'm not really a Pinterest kind of guy. You'll find me on any of those, or bradsugars.com, or you can jump on actioncoach.com if you'd like to find one of my coaches in your area and have them help you with your business. Or amazon.com. You can always find us on Amazon. All the books are there. Audible.com. So yeah, there's a bunch of them. What's next? Look, most of what's keeping me busy is my eldest kid's about to go off to college. The baby's only one, so being father of 5 and a husband, that keeps me very busy. But business-wise, we're in the process of selling a couple of businesses. So that will free up, and maybe we'll buy a couple more, or maybe we'll take a bit less work. But 9 of them right now. It was 9. I sold one, went down to 8, and then back up to 9. Bought another one, or a share of another one. So we'll see. The latest 2 purchases. Our commercial cleaning business, which is based out of Melbourne, which is literally today. The guys at the Franchise Expo in the UK, and so I'll be chatting to them soon to see how they're going on that. But opening that business in the UK. Our food truck business. We just bought into a food truck business here in the States, and I'm going to expand that nationwide, so that'll be a lot of fun as well.
Wow, so lots going on. And look, just from my point of view, you've been, as you've found out in the start of the show, how much I have followed your journey and learnt a lot through reading your books and following your content, and just really appreciate you taking the time to jump on, because I know that you're a very busy man, and we do have a common friend in Travis Bell. Travis and I really were side by side, nearly competitors, but really helped each other along our journeys in business as well. So that's the association there with Travis, and really appreciate you jumping on to this episode today, and thanks for everything.
Craig, wonderful to be with you, buddy. And for any of you, if this is your first time listening, please subscribe to the podcast. There's only great content here. Go back and download all the old ones too. There's some great ones in there. I listened to a couple of them on the weekend.
You've got one shot, so take it. You live one life, embrace it. Don't let fear tie you down, it'll mess you around. You've got one shot.